Hi, and welcome back to I Was Thinking. I'm Nafis.
And I'm Simone. And yeah, welcome back. This is why. Name first, then show Nafis. It's fine. It's fine. We're going to keep rolling. How are you?
I'm okay. I could be better. How are you?
Okay. I'm fine. I know you've been a little stressed. You've been going through a lot. It's also been a while since both of us recorded, so...
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
But no, this past week especially, has been, extremely crazy with, school stuff, personal stuff, everything like that, all combined into 1 week. So it was very...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, a very time-crunched week.
At least you'll get a break soon.
Yeah, that is like my light at the end of the tunnel at this point.
So... we have a lot to talk about today, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it, but that's how we're doing. I don't need to always explain how I'm doing, guys. You know it's bad. So, if you can tell by our title, we are talking about probably one of the most talked about K-dramas of this year, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. So, we're talking about Extraordinary Attorney Woo, or Ooh. And this is going to be interesting because me and Nafis have some different opinions about the show.
Yeah.
That we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, before we actually jump into the show, I just have a quick question, Nafis, since this show is about, the law. The law. Have you...
The law.
Yeah, I didn't know how else to say it. So have you ever done anything with the court system? I'll say, have you been ever summoned for jury duty yet or had to serve on a jury?
Oh, I haven't done any of that yet. Have you?
You never even been summoned?
No.
Girl, I've been summoned twice. The first time I didn't have to do it. I wasn't selected. I was, selected to hear about the case to see if they wanted to select me as a juror. But I didn't get selected for the actual trial. And I think that one was a domestic abuse case. And then the second time was a drug case, actually last year in 2021. And I did get selected, and I am going to play the race card because it was a Black person on trial. Not only was I the only Black juror selected, I was the only Black woman juror selected. Wow. So that was interesting. And that's probably why they chose me. But yeah, I had to be a part of that for 2 days. It was interesting. So yeah.
So how does that work? I guess kind of briefly go through that. Were you there the whole day? Do they give you breaks? How does that all work?
Yeah. So, first, I don't know how it works in other countries, but in America, they send letters, and jury duty is mandatory, basically, but you can't get out of it if, once you go there, or I think you have to call them and say reasons why you can't summit or you can't go, or you can push it back. But if you just don't show up at all, I know you can get in trouble. So I went there at the time they said, sit in a waiting room. And sometimes they don't even they might not even choose you to go into the courtroom to hear about the case. So you have to wait. It can be a while, but I know both times I went, it didn't take that long, especially when I went last year. They were playing a lot of catch up because of COVID. So the trial and the case that we were hearing about all happened in 2019. And yeah, you just literally go in the courtroom. You listen to the attorney. So you already know the attorneys that are going to be involved in the case, the defendant attorney. And then in this case, there's no plaintiff. The plaintiff was the state of Florida itself. So it was the state attorney or someone representing the state attorney. I'm trying to remember because all this happened a year ago. And sometimes I don't remember what I did yesterday.
Right.
So yeah, you listen to what the case is going to be about, and they'll ask the jurors questions because they don't want to pick jurors that may be biased in the case with their ruling. So they don't want anyone if they've been personally involved with like I said, this was a drug case. So if they have some type of way that will change their opinion on how they view the case due to drugs, they don't want to pick you because they believe your opinion or your choosing of guilty or not guilty will be biased in that way and things like that. And then they'll ask you questions to try to see if like maybe the defendant might think you might lean more towards the defendant case to have them rule as not guilty. So they'll choose you that way. Or like if the state attorney thinks that they have a good chance picking a juror that like will rule in their favor, just things like that. So that whole process of selection usually takes about 4 hours. And then, like I said, trial itself took about 2 days. So the first day I was there all day, I think from like 9 to 5 or 6. And the second day didn't take as long. We were able to leave by noon.
Okay.
So we came to a conclusion pretty quickly.
Do they pay you?
Not a lot.
Okay, but you are still paid though.
Like $50.
Oh, for the whole thing?
Yes, it's not a lot. When I say it's not a lot, it's like it's not a lot.
Thank you for your time. Here's $50.
Pretty much, because I forget what they use as an excuse not to really like pay you. It's supposed to be like a civil duty or whatever crap they try to excuse. So yeah. You would make more just going to your regular job than serving as a juror. And I don't know how much people make that aren't like attorneys or judges, like regular people there make anyway. I know when Macy was there, she only made minimum wage, like when she used to work at a courthouse. So it's not a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's interesting.
But yeah, that's my small experience with the... What type of branch is all that deal with? I haven't been in school in a while, guys.
Do not ask me.
Jurisdictional? What is it? What's the word I'm looking for?
Judicial?
Yes.
Judicial? No, now I can't even speak. Oh my gosh. Judicial. Branch. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's different because we're in America. So this is the America judicial system. And what we're going to talk about is Korea. So of course, I don't know a lot. And by a lot, any of how their law system works, the way I organize this, guys, because I am going to be taking the lead as far as like the talking points and things of that nature. I try to mostly just focus on like Attorney Woo and her story. So every episode focuses on a different case. So I really just try to point out her story with the cases. There's only really, I said 7, I think. Honestly, there's really only, I think, 2 or 3 episodes where I talk about the case itself because I feel like they have to involve her personal life the most. So, yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to give a brief description of how you feel about the show before we really get into it, or you want to save it till the end?
I'll probably save it till the end, or I'll just comment in between.
Okay.
But overall, I will say, though, I liked the show. It just wasn't... I liked it a lot less than I thought I would.
Okay.
Because, like, I don't know. I guess this is why I don't like it when, like, a show is all over the media. Because it really spoils it for you. It's like, oh my God, you expect this, like, grand, amazing thing. And then you walk in and you're kind of disappointed at some point. So it's good, but I wouldn't say it's, like, great.
Okay. I mean, this is really one of the only shows I watched when it was coming out. But I'm like that too.
Yeah.
I usually try to wait like a couple months after something has died down to watch it after the hype. But then again, I don't really have high expectations for a lot of stuff. So that don't really bother me as much. I'm not one of those people who are like, oh, you praise this so much. Now I'll watch it. I'm just disappointed. I'm like, I mean, if I like it, if I like it. If I don't, I don't. But I like the show. So yeah. Again, especially because this show is a little bit more mature. The harder episodes, I will put trigger warnings for, mainly 2 of them. And again, I'm going to be saying a lot of Korean words and names, so I am sorry for my mispronunciation. I'm trying to do better, and I said, even if you embarrass yourself, Simone, just try. Just try to say them. You won't get any better if you don't try. So we're going to see how that goes. I feel like I embarrassed myself with the Juanes episode with pronunciation. But yeah. All good, all good. So let's jump into it. So, like I said, the English title for this show is called Extraordinary Attorney Woo. The Korean title is Lee Sang-han Byonhosa Woo Young-woo, which literally translates to Strange Lawyer Woo Young-woo. We'll talk about that a little bit more later because I remember when this first came out, there was some controversy about the title. And even I said that when I saw the word with my little knowledge of Korean, I'm like, doesn't that mean like strange or weird, like in a negative light? So It has 16 episodes and it was released this year between June and August. So the specific dates of like the release was June 29th and August 18th. It aired on Netflix, so you could watch it internationally on Netflix. And I think in Korea, it was released on a station called ENA. But I also don't know if this is on Netflix in Korea. So it could be both. I don't know. But like Nafis and me said earlier, this was a highly anticipated show. Well, not anticipated, but like I did think it did better than people thought it was going to, honestly. Yeah. After the first two episodes, it really had a lot of buzz. When I went online, I saw it had a 8.7 out of 10 rating on IMDb, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Help me, Lord. On Rotten Tomatoes, it had a 100% average tomato meter, which is like where people who register as like critics can go and rate something. And then for the average like audience score rating, it's 92%. So that's very good for a show. That's very high.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you knew this, Nafis, but I'll go ahead and say this now, especially people who have watched this. It has already been greenlit for season 2. So if you think the ending was weird, it's because they are going to make another season. I don't know if they also got greenlit for a season 3. If I heard 2 and 3, but I know for a fact season 2. So they will be coming back.
Okay. Because I had my grievances with the ending as well. So that's good to know.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you knew that or not, or if other people that watched it and weren't unaware, like, why was that ending so weird? It is because they're planning to make more.
But how are they going to do that? He's in the military.
I was going to bring that up later.
Oh, okay.
It's fine.
I mean, you can still bring it up later.
Oh, you didn't say who, but yes. So we're going to keep going. So the show is directed by Yoo In-shik. And the writer of the show is Moon Ji-won. And the writer has been involved in like other shows that has to deal with like autism. So one I found like the most, I think really this is her like biggest production, but I found that she was also a screenwriter for the movie called Innocent Witness or Jungin that came out in 2019. And that movie is about a poor lawyer who defends a suspect in a murder case. And while working on the case, the main character meets a girl named Jiu, who is the only witness to the murder and also has autism. So this isn't her first time writing about characters with autism, just to let people know.
Okay.
So I was able to actually find like an article where they interviewed the writer, and I thought it was interesting just so we can bring up a little bit about like the discussion of the show, good and bad. So like one of the questions they asked her was like the reasons for choosing the word strange. And her response was, I thought the word strange was very appropriate to describe Uyangwoo. There are unfamiliar, heterogeneous negative meanings, but she thought that strangeness leads to creativity and the power to make a better society. And then also one of the podcasts that I listened to, I can put their link in the description of this show. It's called the K-Pop Cast, and they actually did like a review of this show and another show that I tried to watch and I didn't finish. I don't know if I'm going to go back to watching it, but it's called Flower of Evil, because they also recently put that on Netflix. I was watching it on Hulu and then they took it off and then they put it on Netflix, but that doesn't matter anyway. So the guest that they had on there, his name was Sam, and he's from Southpaw / the Liberation MA podcast. And at first they started talking about, which I guess I didn't realize, but if it makes sense, how like it has changed in K-dramas to the way they talk about like certain subjects. Because at first, if you notice in a lot of older K-dramas, and I guess you could say that in anime as well, like they would basically use a lot of coding for main characters to like try to hint they may be like autistic or like queer or things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And basically with the title, he was talking about how with the word isong, or the word for strange, how they're trying to change like that term from like a negative to a positive light. And he gave the example where, I'm just saying what he said, in Korea, When Koreans talk about like being gay and like queerness in general, they'll call themselves Ibon, which I guess means like second class or like another class citizen. But like they changed that word from like a negative connotation to make it like a positive and empowering term, which I mean makes sense if you think about other communities, how they do that too. Like I know being black community, the N word, we do that for ourselves, which is why it's a problem when someone else who isn't black says it. I know for here as well, like in the gay community, I don't know how much like the younger generation use it, but like the F word is another good example of that. And I don't know if any other like communities internationally have words like that as well, but those are just some examples. So I didn't know if you had anything to say about that, Nafis, or if you took problems with like the title at first, like I did.
I thought it was weird that they used strange, but like after hearing like what the writer said, it makes sense why they went with that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as long as they're able to explain why they went with it, and obviously it didn't come from a negative standpoint, then I guess it's okay.
Yeah, that's what I said too, especially after listening to that episode, and hearing his point and his example of other things like that as well. I'm like, okay, to me that makes sense. So
yeah.
I didn't see it as harmful as I did it the first time, but you also just need to know the meaning to understand. So,
but in a way, though, I'm glad they did that because then it creates conversation, or like it helps people think of the word in a different light. So I guess that was kind of their purpose too. So worked out.
Yeah. And then just another question, which was like the biggest one that I saw, especially like online with the discourse about Uyungu, just the way she is and how she presents her like autism. So the question they asked was like, some say that Uyungu is loved because she's autistic, but her disability is less exposed, harmless, and cute. And I'll personally say, before I reveal like the writer's answer, I'm trying to figure out how to say this properly. Either way, I know people will disagree, but it's like, it's a drama and it's a TV show. Their main focus out of no matter what they try to bring a light, like real life problems, is to entertain. So that is their number one thing to do as a TV show. I don't think, and I'm saying this as someone who is not part of this community, so this is just my point of view, and I don't want to speak for the community themselves. I don't think they told any of the stories in a too harsh way. Like they're trying to bring awareness to it, and I don't think they did it in like any type of mocking ways, but they were able to do it still to bring up discussion, even if people disagree, because I feel like no matter what, even people in like the autism spectrum community, they all have such different views and backgrounds and way they were brought up and the way their autism works and how they function in society. Like no one person is the same, and that's the same as like non-autistic person. So each story is going to be different, whether you relate to Uyungu's story or not, because I know a lot of problems was like not only the way she presents of being like cute and harmless and almost childlike, but just like being like a overall genius. So, because there are some people who do have like harder time with their autism, where like their mental capacity doesn't pass by a child. But then there's also people who they call them high functioning, where they could be like Uyungu, or they honestly could function in society better, and you would never know they're autistic unless they tell you themselves. So I just think I appreciate the show because it brings up discussion of how autism, of just bringing awareness of autism in general, and then having people in real life talk about like their experience with autism and how they function in society, whether they agree or disagree or feel like they can relate to Uyungu or not. So
I agree. No, especially with, I agree because it, like you said, it opens up a platform for people who are on the spectrum to talk about like their experiences. And I think like her character is one of the few ones that does represent autism in a much more positive light, so to speak. So
yeah,
it's good. It creates conversation and more awareness.
Because in a lot of shows, it's usually in a negative way, or like it shows them as like being unable to like be handled. It's usually like the stories are usually focused on like the caretakers instead of the actual autistic person itself. So just a lot of things on that side. I feel like I had more to say, but I can't remember though. My brain's all over the place right now, but yeah.
I mean, you can come back to it if you remember.
Yeah, that's true. I can. And it's just important too, like people who are around autistic people as well, because even their views on autism, even though whether they have a child or like a sibling or someone close to them who has autism, their story is still different than like the autistic person themselves. So, but when the writer was asked this question, and I didn't write the whole thing because it was a couple of paragraphs, but I at least wrote down the first one. But she said, if anything can make our society a more livable or better place, I think it will not be our drama, but the opportunity the drama sparked for all this discussion. As members of society, we are trying to listen to these discussions as humbly and seriously as possible. Yes, like any drama protagonist, Uyong-woo was created for the drama by the production team. But if you say that it's impossible for this character to actually have ASD, that's not true. Somewhere in this world, I'm sure that an autistic person like Uyong-woo can exist. There are concerns about the character's positive aspects being highlighted, but when we showed our advising professor the script, they said that they liked the story's approach is to focus on Young-woo's merit. They said that until now, fictional works have emphasized the darker or more difficult side of autism, so they support focusing on the interesting, attractive, and impressive aspects of autistic people. I took heart from that and proceeded. I think some may feel uncomfortable. Rather than defending myself, I would like to say that I understand and sympathize with that, and that there are inevitable limits to my work. And then she goes on to say more, but I just took down that first part because, yeah. And I'll link the whole like interview at the bottom as well, because I think it's a very good and interesting read. So, but yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I know, like I said, that was one of the big discussions about this show from the beginning. So,
okay.
But still, the show did its job, which I think the writer really wanted, is just starts discussions.
Yeah, just
so
try to spark a discussion.
Yeah.
Get people thinking.
Long as discussions can be started, hopefully in positive terms, then I think they did a good job.
I think for the most part, it has been in positive terms.
And not everyone's going to like everything. That's just human nature. We're all not going to like everything. So, all right. So let us get into the show itself. First, I will introduce the cast. First, we'll start with the main character, Uyong-woo, and she is played by Park Eun-bin. Next, we have Lee Jun-ho, who is her love interest, and he is played by Kang Tae-ho. And this is the guy that Nafis was talking about earlier that is Actually, I think he's already in the military.
Yeah, he's already in the military.
Yeah, he's in the military, so I'm going to be curious of how they're going to do season 2, if they're going to wait for him, if they're going to proceed without him and basically like not erase the love interest, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. If they do erase it, I won't be sad.
I will be. I feel like that was a huge part of her journey, especially being autistic. And they talk about it a lot in the show. I'll bring it up later. Just how it's already like hard for her to just exist in society. But like love is just another factor of that. And people thinking she doesn't deserve love because she's autistic.
Yeah.
So even though I have my gripes with like romance in shows, I actually appreciated the romance in this one because it brought up a lot of discussion about how we view love with people with mental disabilities.
Yeah, that's actually brought up in one of the cases too.
Yeah, and I think that's the case I wrote down.
You're going to talk about?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was one of the main ones I wanted to talk about, so I did write that one down in detail. So,
okay.
So next we have her boss, who is the senior attorney, who is Jong Myung-sok, and he is played by Kang Gi-young, my man right there. I discovered
He's
him
one of
in my
favorites.
I love him so much. I discovered him in my very first K-drama, Oh My Ghost. And then he's also in What's Wrong with Secretary Kim. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Next we have Chae Soo Yeon, who is on the same team as Woo Young Woo, and it's also later revealed that they went to college together, like law school together. And she is played by Han Yoon Gong. Next we have the most hated, in my opinion, I personally hate him character. I don't think I've ever hated a character more in my life than him.
Really? Okay.
Let me say his name first. So
he's frustrating.
Yes. His character's name is Kwon Min Yu, and he is played by Ju Jong Hyuk. I'm sorry again for my mispronunciation. But remember in Yumi Cells, I was like, I didn't realize that was him because he's in Yumi Cells. He plays Lewis.
Really? What?
Girl, are you just not realizing that? I said that too.
Whoa.
I said that when we did Yumi Cell. Yeah. I was like, why does this guy keep looking so familiar? And then I was like, oh my God, he is Attorney Kwong. And I hated Attorney Kwong. I still do. Second time watching this.
Wow. I didn't even make that connection, honestly. I was too busy hating his character. Really? Like, he's such a frustrating brat. Anyway, you can continue.
And, okay, yeah. It's just like, I'll get more into it when we talk about the show. It's like there were some things sometimes he would bring up that I didn't disagree with, but it's just the way he went on to like...
The way he approached it was
his actions of things he disagreed of stuff. Exactly. The way he approached stuff is what pissed me off the most. And a lot of the times too, he was very hypocritical of being mad at one thing and then going on and doing that thing he was mad about. And that's where I didn't like him. And I also felt, we'll get into it later. We will get into it later. Let me finish. Because I'm heated. Next, we have the CEO of the law firm that Woo Young works out. That law firm is called Han. I didn't write that down correctly. It's Hanbada Law Firm. Mm-hmm. Sure. The CEO's name is Han Son Yeon, and she is played by Baek Ji Won. Next, we have Woo Young Woo's father, who is Woo Kwang Ho, and he is played by Jeon Bae Soo. Then we have Woo Young Woo's childhood best friend, who is Donggu Rami. I wanted to do their little introduction, but Nafis didn't want to, so it's fine.
Yeah, I'm not gonna butcher their names.
It's okay. I mean, I am, but it's fine. She's played by Ju Hyun Young. And then we have Gurami's boss at the restaurant. I guess he's also friends with Woo Young Woo, the hairy guy.
Yeah, it might as well be friends at this point.
Okay, well, his name is Kim Min Shik, and he is played by Im Seok Jae. And then last but definitely, certainly not least, we have Tae Soo Mi, who is the CEO of Taesan Law Firm. I'm not going to reveal what else she is. And she is played by Jin Kyung. And Taesan Law Firm is basically like the rival law firm of Hanbada. Mm-hmm. And that's all you need to know for now. So, of course, I'm going to put in my, not trigger warning, but like spoiler warning, because we are going to talk about the show and we're going to talk about the whole show. So hopefully you guys watch the show if you're listening to this. If not, you can go ahead, hopefully pause this, go watch the show and then come back. Yeah. I'm really only going to talk about in depth, including the cases. Of course, the pilot, episode 3, 7 and 8, because they kind of go together. And then 15 and 16, which are the last 2 episodes. And then in between, I'll just bring up certain things that happened to Woo Young Woo of the episodes. I don't go into detail with, because all the cases are differently, because they mostly focus on the cases and kind of like Woo Young Woo. It's not really like the side, her story is the side story, but it also kind of is like the side story, if you want to put it that way. So first, we will start with the pilot. I did not write down the title of the pilot, so I don't remember what it was. But basically, in the beginning, we start with Woo Young Woo and she's 5 years old and she's at a clinic with her father. He's basically there to get her evaluated just because of the way she's been acting. She's been nonverbal for a while. And then as a child, when they're at the clinic, we kind of see her like staring at the trinket that's in the window. I don't know if that starts her obsession with whales or not because it's of a whale. And she's just doing things like rocking back and forth. And then as the doctor's talking to her father, he basically already kind of evaluates her as being autistic from the symptoms that he is seeing and what her father is telling him. But like, they're like, we'll do more tests, but basically your daughter's is on the autism spectrum. And then so after that, they go home, and then the old guy that they're renting from, like the couple, basically comes outside all angry, cursing, accusing Woo-Young-Woo's father of sleeping with his wife, which I didn't understand.
Yeah.
He had some problems. But then after the whole fight, when Woo-Young-Woo's kind of freaking out from the noise and the confrontation, is when she starts reciting one of the laws to them. And that's when her father finds out that she's actually been reading his law books. So not only could she actually talk, but she's able to read as well. And he's just like so happy.
Read and memorize such heavy information too.
And at 5 years old.
Yeah. Like when she started off, I was like, whoa.
I cannot remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah. But that was pretty impressive.
It was impressive. So we, of course, go into a time jump where she's a lot older. She wakes up in bed. Oh, God. I wrote down the little thing she always says, and it's also in their promotional like picture for the drama in Korean. So excuse me while I butcher this whole sentence. And you're going to hear her say this a lot in the drama itself. I'm pretty sure she says this phrase in every episode. So when she first introduced herself, she says, "Ne 이름은 우영우, 도바로 일고도, 거꾸로 일구도 우영우, 기러기, 토마토, 수요수, 인두인, byol 우영우." God, that was a struggle.
You did well. I love whenever she introduces herself. She always says that.
Always says that. So basically, when what she's saying is that's how she introduces herself. She says, "My name is Woo-Young-Woo," whether it's read straight, like forward or backwards or flipped, it's still going to be Woo-Young-Woo. And she basically gives out examples of words that, like, whether you flip, no matter how you flip them or how you read them, it's going to be the same. So in English, they're translated to kayak, deed, rotator, noon, and race car. Woo-Young-Woo.
Oh. Okay. That makes sense, because I was like, why does she say those specific things?
You not read the captions?
No, I do, but I didn't realize, like, in Korean it would be read forwards and backwards, not in English. So, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So, like her name, no matter how you flip it, it's still the same, the two letters. So that's why she says that, to give example of to people, which she doesn't have to, but again, that's just part of her charm. Exactly. So we see that her father owns a kimbap restaurant named after Woo-Young-Woo. A side note, that's what I forgot to try at the the Korean festival. I forgot to get some kimbap because I haven't had it before and I wanted to try it. And it was right next to the tent where I was getting the lemonade, but it was so hot. That's why I got like 2 lemonades.
Yeah. That was some good lemonade though.
It was some good lemonade. Oh my God, that lemonade was great. And like the bulgogi that I did get was amazing. And the main reason, like for food, was the hotok. And I got that. That's all I cared about. But next time if I go to like a Korean restaurant and they have kimbap, I'm going to try it because I'm really curious of how it tastes.
Yeah.
But aside from food, because their apartment is right on top of like where the restaurant is, the way the building is set up. So she comes down. It's morning. When I did the whole introduction, we were watching her basically get ready to go out for the day because it's the first day she's starting her new job, and father is trying to help her and tell her things that won't make her really stand out too much. And like at first she was agreeing, and I thought it was so funny where he's like, "And don't talk about whales," and she's like, "Hold up now, Can't talk about whales. That might be a hard limit for me.
Yeah.
But she's like, all right, I will try my best.
I think she goes, what if they bring up whales? Or if it's relevant. And then he's like, yeah, then talk
I think
about
so.
whales.
I don't remember what his answer was for. He's like, but just don't bring it up first.
Yeah.
And he's like, there is no setting you should be in for them to bring up whales. Do not talk about whales. And she's like, whatever.
But if you really do think about it, that is true, though. When are you ever going to bring up whales?
Unless they take some type of case that has to do with like marine biology, but
Yeah.
they don't. Which they should in the next season. I'm just saying.
They should, yeah. Maybe she can finally get to see her whale.
Right. So when she's leaving, we also get like a view of a plaque that he has up on the wall of an article basically saying that like Woo Young-woo is the first autistic attorney in Korea.
Okay.
And then we keep talking about whales. Whales is her favorite like animals, but I think it's also just sea life in general. So throughout the show, you're going to see a lot of like animation of like sea life. Anytime she gets an idea or like she figures something out, they do this thing where like they focus on her face and then she gets like a gust of wind. And then like in the background, you'll see like some type of B-roll of like some type of wildlife in the sea, whether it's a whale, a dolphin, things of that nature.
Don't forget the audio. You also hear the whale too. Do you not?
That's true.
Yeah.
You do.
I was like, wait, am I imagining things?
I figured that was kind of implied with the video. I guess that does make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, though. You're right. So when she first arrives to her job, she has trouble getting through the revolving door, which is when she first meets Lee Juno. And I thought it was interesting because they actually do have a great discussion about the revolving door, because she brings up a good point where she's like, the mechanism of getting into this building does not help disabled people, like anyone in a wheelchair or like crutches. Yeah. That revolving door does not help them. And even the doors that aren't revolving does not give them easy access to enter the building. I don't remember if that building also you need to get upstairs before you even get to the door. I can't remember.
Get upstairs?
Yeah, I can't remember if like the buildings is on some type of hill where you have to get upstairs to get to the door just to get to the building, or if it's just like flat on the ground. No, I don't think so.
It's flat on the ground. No, it is flat on the ground.
It is?
From what I recall, yeah.
Okay, but still, that's still a good point, even like buildings like that. I just like how they bring that up as a point to think about, like, oh, you know, there are a lot of structures and mechanisms of like office buildings that aren't disabled friendly, physically disabled friendly. Well, and mental too. As you can see, she has trouble getting the revolving door. But yeah, another good thing to talk about among people. So then he takes her to go meet with the boss. That's when we get introduced to the team. So her boss, I didn't write down the Hangul, so sometimes if I mispronounce it's because of the romanization. So her boss, Jong Myung-sok, Chae Soo-yeon, and Kwon Min-woo. And then I guess they weren't expecting her to be there because they're all kind of shocked that she showed up. But then once they're like, oh, okay, part of the team, and then she does her little thing and they realize something's a little off about her. She asks him if he got the second part of her resume, because I guess the second part of her resume informs employers that she is autistic. But as you notice when he picks it up, the staple part is taken out. It's only the first page. And there's also a little like handwritten note on there, which Attorney Kwong's little nosy ass sees. And for some reason, he is able to pick up quickly that it's written by the CEO. Because he brings that up once Myung-sok leaves to go talk to the CEO about Woo Young-woo. Like, why is she here?
Yeah. Why is she being personally recommended by the CEO?
Yes. Because actually, I don't know if it was brought up in this first episode, but I'll say it anyway. I think she actually did apply and she got denied. But when the CEO came back from something, she saw that Woo applied for the law firm. and like you said, recommended her herself and like hired her herself. So that's when she knew, like, okay, there's something, I guess, about this girl. I don't know if Myung-suk picked up. It might have been because of like other things and not just because she's smart. Attorney Kwang definitely picked up like there might be some favoritism going on.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
So we start with the first case. So she's assigned to a woman who is accused of hitting her husband, who has dementia in the head, with an iron during an argument. And she is actually being charged with attempted murder. And then later we found out it's actually the old couple that used to be her landlords when she was a child. And then she also goes into this whole thing. That's when she first breaks up the whales, because she looks at the iron and I guess it's shaped like a sperm whale.
Okay.
And then we get a little bit of the background of the whole fight. So, like, again, I don't understand what her husband's problem is, because when the delivery guy is delivering something for them, he just automatically assumes like the wife was flirting, that she must be seeing the delivery guy who was like literally half her age. And then he starts going into a thing where like he should have married a bar girl, and then he calls her a prostitute. Like, bro, yeah. No wonder she hit you and tried to knock your ass out.
Yeah, like I know he needed help, definitely.
Ew,
therapy of some kind.
A generational thing, and I don't know how divorce works in Korea, because I don't understand how she is still with him after all these years. This is a repeat pattern. Why is he so insecure?
I don't know, but the show doesn't fully explore that, you know. So your guess is as good as mine.
They're on a time limit, but anyway, basically, what Myung-suk, Attorney Jung, assigns to Young-woo is to try to get the wife on probation by pleading guilty. But after Young-woo goes and talks to the wife, and like the wife remembers her and everything, explains the case, she wants to try the not guilty verdict and then get her on probation for bodily injury instead of attempted murder.
Okay. I'm not sure if you mentioned this earlier, but Attorney Jung wasn't like too confident about having Attorney Woo on the team, so he takes that complaint to the CEO, and the CEO was like, test her out with this first case and then see how she does, and then decide after that. So I wanted to point out that he also had like a prejudice against like people with on the autism spectrum, so that kind of like influences the way he sees her and how she handles the case in a way.
Yeah, and then I think also I wrote down, if you could tell by like his face after Young-woo was kind of like explaining the reasoning of trying to plead a not guilty case, I think he did start to respect her a little bit more.
Yeah.
Being like, okay, even though she's autistic, she does know what she's doing. It seems like she might be able to get the job done. So we'll see how this works. So, because like you said, he did have a prejudice. I don't think he was very vocal about the prejudice, but he's one of those people where it was like, I don't know how to describe it. Would that be considered like micro prejudice? Where he isn't like being mean about it, but like he's still kind of cautious and trying to say it nicely, but there's still something there.
Yeah. I don't...
Because it's kind of like with microaggression.
His intentions were never bad, though.
Yeah.
Like him, he's coming from a good place, but like, I guess he could... No. It'll just come off as prejudice, in my opinion, I think.
Okay.
Or biased, or...
I didn't know if there was another term for that, so...
There probably is. There's a term for everything these days.
That's true. Because there's like a difference between aggression and microaggression. And microaggression is kind of skirts on that, where it's like, you know it's aggression, but it's the way they do it to try to seem innocent and nice about it. But like you said, I don't think even with his prejudice, he had any bad intentions like other people that we'll discuss later.
Yeah.
So
foreshadowing.
Yes. And then again, we re-meet Lee Jun-ho and realize he is part of the litigation team. So I don't actually know what his position is. Is he like, because he's not an attorney, is he like a paralegal? Like, I know those are things, but I don't actually know what a paralegal is.
I feel like that's probably his role as a paralegal.
Okay.
Because
I
he's
don't know what
always like,
paralegals do.
me neither, but it just seems to be that way.
But he's not an actual attorney. That I know for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. His role is still unclear to me. They never actually defined it. Now that I think about it, they never said what he does.
We just know he works in the office. I wish they did, especially for people who are unfamiliar with like law terminology and positions.
Yeah.
Like we all know what attorneys and judges are, but we don't know like the other positions that are involved.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, and then of course we meet all the other characters. Like, in the first episode is when she meets with Don Gurami and the other guy, the chef. I'm gonna just call him a chef because I can't be remembering all these names, guys. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And she's trying to get like advice of like how she should be in her very first time, like in an actual courtroom in the court case. I thought that whole exchange was funny.
That was so cute.
Yes. And then I also wrote, I'm actually like kind of surprised she disclosed having autism in the court. Again, I guess this is just me not knowing Korean laws because I know in America, you don't have to do that. There are laws to protect you to where you do not have to disclose any type of disabilities if you do not want to. Disabilities that are not obvious to like the naked eye, basically. So, but I'm glad she did too.
I think she probably did that just to get it out of the way because that's something that can be argued against the case and against her. So I guess she just did to get it out of the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm not upset that she did that, and it makes sense.
But it wasn't necessary. Yeah.
Yes. So, and I also don't know what they would consider plaintiff because there's no actual plaintiff. Would he also be considered like because here in America, again, we have states, so they're called estate attorneys when they're representing like the government itself in a way. So I don't know what to call him. So I'm just I just wrote down like the certain cases like him, state attorneys, even though I know that's not the thing.
Prosecutor? I think it's prosecutor versus them. It's not prosecutor.
Would it be a prosecutor then?
I don't know.
Girl, again, this is coming from two people who know nothing about how the law works.
Yeah.
And like court cases. We're trying.
From what I understand, though, the way court cases work is like you have a defense attorney and then you have a prosecutor.
Right.
And the prosecutor is basically the one that says...
because sometimes she is the prosecutor.
Really? Where? When?
There's certain episodes where she's either the defense attorney because she's defending the client or she is the prosecutor for her clients. They play both. They do both.
But she was mostly defense, though.
I would say it was even. Like in this case, she was a defense attorney. I could think of, I guess I'm skipping ahead to episode 7 and 8 about the road being built in the town. They were technically the prosecutors because the defendants were the construction company. The prosecution team was the town. And they're bringing up the case for the town.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say state attorney.
Yeah.
For me.
Stick with that.
But basically during the whole first case is when we get into an incident because they bring like the husband in for questioning just to prove like not say that she tried to murder him, but like there's a reason why she might have lashed out because he's, insecure, lashes out, especially to like Uyoung since they have a past.
Mm-hmm.
And then they escort him out. But then like, I don't know if it was that same day or like the next day, all of a sudden he dies and like they want to up the charge from attempted murder to murder and they ask for an indictment. Now that whole scene, I had a problem with because why didn't they try to pull the wife aside to let her know her husband died? Why did they have to tell her right then and there when they all found out? Because that poor woman had to find out with everyone. They couldn't have pulled her aside before the recess or after the recess. He was just so adamant of like being like, okay, we can up the charge from attempt to murder now that he passed away.
It just shows you that they don't think sometimes when you're
Yeah.
just so hyper focused.
Because another issue I had was with the doctor, not just this doctor in this episode, but another doctor in a different episode where basically later on Woo Young-woo discovers that like the reason he probably died, and not only died but like passed out from their initial argument, is because he may have a brain hemorrhage due to the dementia, and that would cause injuries. But like when the doctor was doing the initial examination, he didn't think of that. All he was like, oh, these injuries were probably just through like the iron that she hit him with. That's it.
Yeah.
No further like looking into it. No further like, sir, you're a doctor. This didn't seem like you really tried that hard to look further into what could have caused not only his death, but the injuries.
But I can see why the doctor didn't go too far in detail. I mean, I think he kind of mentioned this too. It's not his job to find the cause. He was just treating the patient that came to him.
I mean, yes. But I feel like that has to do with more examination. Because I also feel like...
Was it clear, though, that he had dementia? Like, did this doctor know that he had that pre-existing condition?
He did.
He did?
Or did he not? I can't remember now that you asked that. I thought he did.
Because if he did know, then that's something, then yes, then that is something the doctor should have been aware of. Like, this is a potential problem. But if he didn't know, then I can understand why he didn't look further.
I think he knew he had dementia, but he didn't know he was getting headaches that may have been caused by the dementia.
Okay.
Again, a lot of terms, medical and like law terms that we just can't further get into. But I still feel like personally that was kind of like a negligence on his part.
He should have done better?
Yes, because he was comparing the iron and his headaches to being hit by the iron, but even as they said in the court, there was no really like any injuries on his head, because they pointed out something in the scan, but that wasn't caused by him getting hit. It was caused by his dementia. The injuries are on his arms when he blocked it.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. So in that case, I would say there would be more of a negligence type thing.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Anyway.
But regardless, though, his vibe, though, when he was talking just came off as, like, not my business, not my problem.
That was my problem. Like, take your job seriously, because you're there to... And that's how facts get, like, misconstrued and everything.
Yeah.
Because you don't actually try to look at all the facts. Mm-hmm. That's one thing about court that I don't think people understand. The point of like attorneys' jobs is really just to present and argue the facts outside of emotion, outside of biases. And you can see that a lot and throughout the show, where even like a lot of the witnesses a lot of their biases came out. That's why, like when I said in my case for jury duty, they try to weed out people who they think their bias and emotions are going to overtake listening to the facts and judging the thing on the facts. Because at the end of the day, unless you're there, you don't know what actually happened, which is sad. Yeah. But a lot of stuff in like the system is a lot of he say, she say. Mm-hmm. So the doctor just didn't seem like he wanted to get his facts straight or do further research to make sure all the facts were presented. Maybe that's another plot hole in the show. I don't know. But still, that just pissed me off. It did. So.
No, I can see why.
Yeah. And basically at the end is when the CEO Han comes and meets up with Woo Young-woo's father at the Kimbap restaurant. And that's when we basically figure out that they have known each other previously, because she calls him Sonbae. So they must have went to school together.
How convenient.
Yes, how convenient. So we'll get more into that later. Basically, for episode 2, I basically wrote down just like, this is the case about the wedding dress that fell off, and how she was marrying like the son of, I don't know if he owned the hotel or something else, but it was basically just like an arranged marriage.
Yeah, type thing.
And the father was upset because her wedding dress came down and everyone could see, you know, she was exposed from the top up, and he wanted 1 billion won in damages. I don't know what that converts over to in US dollars. I just know it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then because also that's when we learn about the law company, which is called Taesun, which will come up more in later episodes. I just really enjoyed that episode because that is an episode that talks about, like, you know, LGBT. I don't know why I always mess up that acronym, because we later find out that the daughter is actually gay. So that scene both times still gags me at the end when she's like, I don't want to sue anymore. And then when her father's all upset, she's telling her the reason, like, do you actually know why I go to therapy? And then, because I knew at the beginning too, I'm like, she's looking out into the crowd. There is someone out there that, like, she's actually in love with, and she does not want to be marrying this guy. I just wasn't expecting that, but it made me happy. And the way they walked out of that courtroom together, hand in hand, I gag every time.
I think that was one of the most... See, I think after this episode, the show got more traction because of how they handled that whole... Because that was such a unique case, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but it was good. And then, like, this is when Juno and Attorney Woo are, like, interacting more as well.
Mm-hmm. Because she finds out she has someone to talk to whales about.
Yeah.
So she's just so happy someone's actually listened to her talk.
I don't know if it's this episode or a later episode where it kind of shows how she'll call randomly just to talk about whales.
I think that's in a later episode.
It's a later one.
Yeah. Okay. And then basically at the end of episode 2 as well, that's when we actually meet the CEO of Taesun Firm, which is Taesumi.
Okay.
So next, this is one of the episodes I really wanted to talk about. The episode is titled Pangsuro Hagesumnida, which is translated to This is Pangsu, which is a ginormous penguin character they have over there. I don't know if you've ever seen what Pangsu looks like or not.
Mm-hmm.
I have. Okay.
Yeah.
But this case is about Jong-kyun, who is an autistic 21-year-old man, and he's accused of killing his older brother. Forgot to put a trigger warning on this one while I was talking, of course. So this was one of the episodes I wanted to put a trigger warning for someone, you know, committing suicide or unaliving themselves. And basically the whole premise of this episode is because they're like, oh, Eun-young-woo is autistic. Our client is autistic. Let's put them together because they might be able to, like, communicate or relate to each other because they're autistic. And this should work.
But it turns out there are different levels of autism.
Yes, and this is really where she brings up the difference of autism, which she emphasizes a lot in later episodes, which one of the things, like I said, I respect, because when she's talking to her boss basically about the case, and when he tells her that's really why she's on the case, she brings it up. She says, like, and she gives the official term, autism spectrum disorder, which indicates a large variety of people who are labeled it. Again, the word spectrum's important.
Yeah.
Because in this case, the defendant, unlike Eun-young-woo, he has a mental capacity between the ages of 6 and 10 years old. So...
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, you can see that when they meet him. Also, like, when we meet the parents, the mother points out, because the defendant, he's a very large man, like, physically, and because of the way he acts with that mental capacity, people are already intimidated by him. So, yeah, that was just one of the problems. And, like, I wrote this note just for my own self, but I was like, you know, knowing that, you would think, even though they have Eun-young-woo, who is a little bit more advanced in their autism than their defendant, why did they not bring in a professional to help with the case? Why were they solely relying on Eun-young-woo?
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Why was there not a specialty doctor in autism helping this poor man.
Wow, I actually did not think about that.
Yeah, that was like when I was watching the second time, I'm like, even though this is making me emotional, why? Why is there no help?
Yeah,
maybe
'cause
that is
usually-
something I don't understand in like their society, but I don't know. Again, might be another plot hole. But I thought about it the second time I watched it.
Yeah. But I think with that case, though, they were trying to pin it on him and not
They
reveal
were.
the cause of the older son's death. Because that would have
Yes.
been more shameful. So I guess that could be possible reason.
Yeah, because what I enjoy about this episode also, which made me very emotional, like I just felt bad for everyone. You saw the differences of society, basically. So like in the case of the son that died, it's later revealed that he actually he was committing suicide and his brother was trying to help him. And this isn't the first time he's tried to commit suicide. And this isn't the first time his brother caught him trying to commit suicide. But because he was so smart in a prestigious college, studying to be a doctor, they were more worried about tarnishing his reputation than trying to help their son, who is mentally disabled, be innocent, which he was. But because of his like strength and everything, it's kind of the reason why he died. I also don't know how long it took them to actually break into his room to try to save him. I think he was still alive, but still. Because there was even a point where they were like getting mad at Uyung-woo when they found the diary to let the parents know, like, hey, your son was actually trying to, you know, kill himself. I don't remember. I think they bring up her autism. I know later on the mother was kind of like, the reason they lashed out on her was because they were kind of jealous because they heard of cases where like people with autism could be like Uyung-woo or their son. And I guess they felt bad that their son turned out the way he did, even though that's not their fault or they can't control that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting, especially when she was she was online when it's because they were trying to argue not to do that. Like they're even going to risk their son who's on trial have more time if it meant they didn't have to release that their other son who died was trying to attempt suicide. So
like I said, they were just trying to hide the whole suicide fact.
Yeah. Because what I was trying to say a couple minutes ago was just Uyung-woo reading comments online when that case did end up actually coming out into court and just seeing people reply like, oh, why did we have to lose someone who's like becoming a doctor for this autistic person? So because that hurt me reading. That hurt me too.
Which is another commentary, right? About like the online community.
That I feel like is a whole discussion people are not ready for.
Yes.
Ooh, that could be a whole nother episode just in itself of online social media platforms and how it affects our mental health, even functioning, quote unquote, societal functioning people. So
I just want to shout out to the actor, though. Did such a great job portraying that character. So convincing.
I also enjoyed when they were first trying to like get him to open up that song of Pangsu that they were singing. They do the whole
dance and everything.
I want to know how long it took him to reshoot that because I wouldn't be able to keep a straight face.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and again, a lot of these cases are very kind of open-ended, so we don't really know what happened to him. I just know that they didn't take over the case anymore, so we don't know what concluded. Like they got off the case, they had to get another attorney on that one. So because I don't even know in court, I think they're trying to argue like not that it's unfair, just how since Uyung-woo has autism and how she wasn't able to like properly, I guess, defend the son on trial. So I know they bring it up sometime in court. I know that's what that one state attorney was trying to argue, of how they're incompetent and things of that nature. So then before we move on from that one, we also just learned how Lee Juno and Minu, they live together, which also doesn't get brought up in the show. Hopefully it will in season 2, of how they know each other to live together. Are they childhood friends? Did they just needed a roommate?
I felt like that was more of the scenario. They just needed a roommate. They just happened to work at the same place.
Okay, I was just confused about that. I'm like, how do you guys know each other?
Yeah.
Also, what is important about that episode, which will be brought up later, is Juno actually runs into a friend when he's out with Woo. I forgot what they're doing, but the way the friend sees Woo react to the people doing lawn service in the back, and immediately she's like, "Oh, Juno, are you doing volunteer work?" Like, bitch, seriously?
You can tell she did not think about her comment.
Not at all. She's just like, "Oh, this is why you're such a kind person. Look at you doing volunteer work." I'm like, wow.
And she holds that to heart for like the next few episodes. Poor thing. I feel so bad for her.
I know. But again, this is important stuff that we need to bring up because this is how people actually act.
Yeah,
this is how their
true.
biases, even if they think it's innocent, really need to have a discussion of how we see and treat others, especially others that are different from ourselves. So, but moving on, just the only thing you need to know about episode 4 is that after the whole thing kind of traumatized Woo from episode 3, she does turn in a letter of resignation. And it's very interesting watching her try to work at the kimbap restaurant. Trying to tell that one guy all the stuff that's in the kimbap, and her father's like, no, go back to the law firm.
Because we can't do this.
Yes, because this scenario is about actually her friend, Dongurami, and her father and his 2 older brothers. They basically like trick him into signing a share of like family land that they inherited from their father passing. Which, anything that has to do with money and family, guys, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know if I understood the joke correctly, but did you understand? I could be wrong. Again, we don't get feedback. I would like someone to correct me on this. Did you get the joke of Gurami's father and his brother's names?
No, not really.
Because the oldest is called Dongdong-il, Dongdong-yi, Dongdong-sam. Her father's name is Dongdong-sam.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Okay, I think I'm interpreting it wrong, but because they kind of make a joke about their names, I think it's basically that their father was like, either wasn't good at names or lazy. He basically named his sons 1, 2, 3. Il-isam is Sino-Korean for 1, 2, 3. They're literally the oldest, Dongdong-il. Second child, Dongdong-yi. Third child, Dongdong-sam.
That makes sense now.
Yeah, so when I realized that, I was like, don't tell me he just named his children 1, 2, 3.
That must have been fun growing up.
Oh god, I'm sure they got teased a lot. But basically in that episode, we go through that trial of that. We see a history of Woo and how Gurami really met in like primary school, and how she basically like defended her and like helped her in school bullying. Like that one scene when the kids tricked Woo to ask the teacher where she got her eye surgery from, and the teacher slapped her.
Yeah,
I was like, isn't this illegal? Are they still allowed to hit children?
But not
in
only
South
that,
Korea?
the teacher should have known better. Like,
you shouldn't be a teacher if your first reaction of something they do, because they're children, they're gonna say and do dumb shit, is to hit them.
No, but like, from a teacher's perspective, like, do you not know your students? Like, do you not know what questions your students are capable of? Like, that's something you should already know. She's not the type to ask like questions like that.
Right, or even just have a warning that she's autistic.
Yeah.
But even if it was a regular student, I'd be saying the same thing if your first reaction was to go and slap them and then leave the classroom. That was wild to me.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. But
honestly,
I guess, I don't know, it's probably normal there.
I hope not. But again, I don't live there, so... And then basically just towards the end of that episode is when we get a flashback of episode 1, the pilot of when Han Son-young, which is the CEO, and Woo Guan-ho, which is Woo Young-woo's father, what they talked about. because he is the one who brought up, like, I thought her application got declined. So I was actually really surprised that she is working there. And she told him, like, oh, don't worry about it. I saw her application and I knew she was your daughter. And that's why I wanted to take a chance on her, because I know she's smart. I know her credentials in school. Even when she was talking, I knew, I'm like, this seems like there's another motive that we're not being told yet. But we will find out what the second motive is, not just because she wanted to give Young-woo a chance and knowing the difficulties of other law firms declining her because of her autism. So then all you need to know about episode 5 is actually when my dislike for Attorney Kwong really started, because him and Young-woo are working on a case together about the two rival ATM companies. And it's about like a stolen design, technology, and the trademark of the machine. And just from the beginning, I was like, oh, this is the disaster, because it really showed, I put like the male ego and misogyny between not only like Kwon Mino, but like the client himself. And then like when they first meet and the guys start like bonding over where they went to university, as well as like what branch of the military they were in. And she's kind of just sitting there off to the side, like, okay, can we get started on the case already? And she was already ill prepared, because that morning she wasn't aware she was going to be on the case. And then Attorney Kwong just comes in and gives her all of these like files to look over. He's like, oh, by the way, we're meeting with the client in about 5 minutes. So she already looked like unprofessional and bad, and he did that on purpose.
Yeah.
But then there's a part like later on in the episode itself where she actually tries to like, I think it's the second meeting with them. But she's like, okay, Attorney Kwong, let's like go over notes to figure out how to help the client that we have, or like get better terminology of like what we're dealing with. And he's like, oh no, it's fine. I'll just do my own thing. You do your own thing. You're basically my like competition. So like he brought up, which I wasn't aware of when I first watched this. But the second time, I guess they're on contracts since they're new. Mm-hmm. So their contract's only for 1 year. And he brings up that like they're watching their every move, reviews from clients, and how the case goes to like determine if they want to renew their contract with the firm or not. But it's like, sir,
you're on the same team.
Yeah. She's not your competition. It's one thing if she was from another law firm.
Not in that scenario. You guys are really
working on the same case together. Why are you viewing her as competition? Maybe when you guys become senior attorneys, that's one thing. But right now, I'm pretty sure part of your evaluation is how you guys work together. And right now, you're failing.
If that's the case, the other attorneys should also be seen as competition. But she's not.
Exactly.
So he's always had it in for her since the beginning. Like, you could tell.
And I don't know if that is because of her autism or because of when he saw the note of like her recommendation because of her autism. What do you think?
I think it has more to do with the note. I only say this because later on, I'm not sure if you're going to mention this later, but later on he talks to the third attorney, the new one that's on. What's her name? Attorney what? Attorney Woo's friend from.
Hang on. Suyeon. Her name's Suyeon.
Yeah. So he tells her that no matter what Attorney Woo does, Attorney Suyeon, yeah, no matter what Attorney Woo does, whether it's good or bad, she'll always be set apart because of how brilliant she is. So she's never technically part of the competition, but between them two, they have to make sure they do everything right and they're not falling into like bad graces, if I made sense. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, no matter what she does, like, she still has a place, but for them, it's a different story.
Yes, but his argument also doesn't matter because later in episodes, I'm kind of going fast, guys, because I'm not trying to make this 2 hours. We later learned that Suyeon also, I don't know if it's an advantage in her job, but like she's also from a place of a family with power. Her father is the chief judge of the courthouse. So why isn't he using the same logic?
But I think he mentioned that before he knew that. He had that talk with her before he knew that. Right?
I don't know, but it's like, so. I don't remember, but it's like,
but it's very hypocritical. No, I see what you're saying, though. It's very hypocritical, the logic.
Because you're really only targeting Woo Young-woo, which I'm pretty sure your law firm is how big? I'm sure there are plenty of other people there on special privileges and recommendations. So why are you just attacking her?
Right.
Which didn't make sense to me.
But I also think he's jealous of her, like how smart she is, too. Because whenever she'd come up with a really brilliant solution, like, he would always have that face on, like, that expression, like, okay, you know?
No, it definitely comes from jealousy.
So I think it's, like, more of a combination of things. Yeah. Than just one specific thing.
I think he has a point when he always talks about special privileges, but I think his actions are driven by jealousy, and that's what I don't like. Instead of actually maybe trying to work harder or like maybe he can't win the position that he's in. He can't really do anything about the special privileges, but instead of trying to work around that, he's just trying to sabotage. He can't do anything.
He definitely tried to do something.
Well, yes, but in a sneaky way. I meant in a logical, ethical way. He doesn't try to do anything.
To be fair, he did go up to Attorney Jung and asked him why she gets to come back after taking leave, quote unquote, and just come back as if nothing happens. I understood his point there, because in reality that is unprofessional, but they were also giving her some leeway just because of her whole situation. So in a way, I can get why he's upset, but I also understand why they tackled it the way they did. Like, they didn't penalize her for taking that many days off.
Yes, and I agree with that too, as far as treating her fairly, to penalize her as well. But I don't remember if it was that situation or a different situation where, like, sometimes he would talk to Myung-suk, and I'm like, okay, if you also have a really big problem with this, like people do here in America, why aren't you going higher up? Like, go past your boss to make formal complaints, which he never did. Yeah. Never went to the CEO himself.
But he did go onto the company intranet and express his grievances there. We're
going to talk about that later. Yes. Is it in the same episode or in a different episode?
I think it's a different one.
Okay.
Because this is where it really gets the ball rolling with this case. Yes. And then he goes to Attorney Jung, and then, like, just from there, it kind of spirals out.
Yeah. So, and then also, I guess this is just a case where, like, you can kind of see Woo Young-woo battling with her morals, because, like, just the way she views the world, she's like, she knows one thing is right and one thing is wrong, and then later in this trial she figures out that basically their client has been lying to them the whole time. So, and that's another thing where, like, her and Kwon kind of butt heads, because she's like, well, we should be doing the right thing, we should be, like, I don't know if she says not represent him, but, like, just expose that the client's lying, and actually the defendant is really truthful, but he's like, our job is to be on the client's side no matter if they're in the wrong or not. So it's not your place to be like, expose them for actually being untruthful.
See, that's one of the sketchier parts of being a lawyer. Like, you have to digest things like you are not okay with. Yeah.
So.
And so, like, her struggle in that, like, where she literally just sat there and, like, doubted every single ethical value, moral, anything related to that was just... It was, like, I understand her dilemma.
Yeah, I do as well. And then this is also the episode where I feel like not only my opinion on Attorney Kwon changed, but as far also Attorney Che or Suyeon, just because there's a part where they're sitting, you know, in the cafeteria and, like, they're coming up with, like, nicknames, because, like, in this episode, Woo Young's nickname is the wild card, and Kwon Mino's is, what is it, tactician? So she's like, oh, so what is my nickname? And then, like, she almost starts crying when Woo Young says she's, like, a spring sunshine, and just explains all the things, like, she did. Sweet. I know. I was like, I didn't realize this girl helped her so much. Like, she even pointed out in that moment, she's like, you helped me in school. You told me when, like, classes were canceled. Even just now, when I was struggling with my water bottle, you helped open it, and, like, you just pretended like it was nothing and just continue. Like, basically, she's just saying she appreciates her because she treats her normally and defends her when people try to bring up Young-woo's autism when they don't need to, especially when they question like her position as like an attorney. So that's when I started actually really liking her character. I still don't appreciate the forced romance that they try to put on her. But yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. I do hope though in the second season they explore it more.
I don't know. I guess we'll see. And again, we go back to Tae-sung before the episode ends. Basically, we find out she's applying for an important position. I wrote down the Minister of Justice. I don't know what they do. But she's basically having an interview with one of the people involved with it. And they're like asking her if there's anything they need to worry about. And she's like, no, like what? And he's like, well, there's a rumor that you had a baby out of wedlock during college. And she's like, oh no, that's just a silly rumor, which I didn't think that was also still such a big deal. But I guess because of the position that she's in, it is a big deal.
I guess in this universe it is, like in the show's universe.
Yeah. Well, I just don't know if that's also like that in real life or not.
It could be.
Really, all you need to know for episode 6, which I would encourage watching it. I know it was a little hard for me to fully understand just because they talked about a lot of the differences between like South Korea and North Korea, because the case is about a North Korea defector, which I didn't know what a defector meant at the time, but I guess it just means someone who flees their country. Okay. Yeah. And that's when I talked about like another bias with the doctor that I don't have time to bring up. And then just we watch a potential love triangle that they try to tease for a little bit between Soo-yeon, Young-woo, and Juno, which I'm really happy that didn't go anywhere, because I would have been mad if all the praise I was giving her the previous episode about her being there for Young-woo and like being a friend basically gets thrown away for Juno. I would have been upset if they made that a plot.
Yeah. I will say though, like this is my favorite client that they've taken on. She was just so cool. Her and the other, well, no, this is my favorite client. She was just so cool. The North Korean defector.
Yeah, and it's like I understood why she did what she did. It just talks about like how they treat, I don't know if she'd be considered a refugee, basically. Because, you know, she didn't go to court because she wanted her daughter to be old enough to remember her. So when she did, because she wasn't a bad person, she still ended up going to confess the crime. But she just wanted to make sure her daughter would remember her for when she comes back and they could still be together. But let's go on to 7 and 8. So this is the one I brought up earlier about the construction company, and they want to build a road for easier access that will be in the middle of a small town. And the town doesn't want it because of the disruption of the land, as well as like pollution from the cars, the noise, and everything. And we still see a little bit of like the love triangle, and like Young-woo is trying to basically back off when she thinks that Juno likes Soo-yeon, and like tries to get them to be together and stuff. But thankfully, like I said, that doesn't really go anywhere, because Soo-yeon actually picks up that like, oh wait, Juno doesn't actually like me. He likes Young-woo. And like, I was actually surprised when she realized that. She brings it up to Young-woo, because that starts the discussion of like a love life for Young-woo as an autistic person, which I thought was needed. And she can kind of see after talking to her, Young-woo's hesitation of going after or even thinking about if she has feelings for Lee Juno or not. Not only just like the views outside of like her being autistic and he's not, but just like her own internal battle of like the way she's not the best at expressing emotions, as well as like being in her old world, basically. So
yeah, I mean, it's hard for the layman. So imagine someone who has like a disability.
Exactly. And then in this episode also is when Attorney Kwang gets more into his like frustrations with Young-woo, because they actually run into her father because he goes to the company to talk to the CEO.
Oh yeah.
because he finds
And
out that Taesumi is defending or representing the construction company, and that's where he's like, I don't want them to meet because he doesn't want them to get to know each other. And the big reveal. I don't even know if I should say the reveal now or not. I'm trying not to, but again, hopefully you watch the show. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Or you could possibly guess.
Yeah, I feel like they make it obvious, but not too. They try not to make it too obvious, but like if you pick up hints, like I realized it. What, the third, fourth episode?
Yeah. That's like, she keeps looking for Attorney Wu. I wonder.
Or like, her father keeps trying to hide something every time the rival company Taesan Law Firm is mentioned. I wondered why.
Yeah, but at this point, I think we pretty much know what's going on here with the overarching story.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is when he pulls over Suyeon and discusses the special treatments of Uyung-woo because they ran into her father or not. He brings it up to Uyung-woo when they meet. He's like, oh, why is... Because he asks her, like, is that your father? Why is he here? And then he realizes where he's coming from. And he's like, of course they know each other. That's how you got the job. Not because you're smart, but because of special treatment. And then this is also kind of like when we not learn a little bit more, but we find out there's tension, bigger tension than we thought of between Hanbada and Taesan. Like, I hope they bring this up in the second season. Like, something happened in their college days for her to hate Taesumi. This is too much for just rival law firms. There is some personal, deep problems that happened. And I want to know.
Yeah. Me too, because this is kind of going fast forward, but like towards the end, like the ending scenes, the Hanbada CEO, she's like, I let you go easy this time, and then just goes away in her car. So yeah, there's something big there.
Yes. But episode 7 is what you were talking about, is when after everything and after, I think what pushes him to the end of seeing Uyung-woo's father at the place is when he goes online to be anonymous and tries to basically expose the corrupt hiring process of the law firm. And then he gonna show
everybody and their mother knew it was him.
Literally, he did not do a good job of hiding it. And he gonna try to go to work the next day and pretend it's not him. Like, sir, that's why I was happy Suyeon was literally the first one to call him out. I forgot what happened or if he said something, and he was complaining about something, and she's like, why? So you can go online to rant to expose it?
Yes, girl.
Even their boss, knew, because he looked at them and he turned around like, I'm not getting involved in this.
Not surprised.
He was not surprised.
Yeah.
Because what did he think that was going to do? Besides people talking online?
I don't know. It just makes him look worse now, though.
It does. And like, you would think, I would have thought he would have gotten more punishment for that because he's an employee basically not exposing like company policies, but I would have thought he would have gotten in more trouble for that than he really did.
Whistleblowing?
Yeah. Although, honestly, there are some things that need to be whistleblown in companies. We won't get into that, but still, I was surprised he wasn't reprimanded more for that than... I don't even think he took any type of punishment.
But hey, he doesn't see that now, does he?
The hypocrisy.
I know.
Again, the hypocrisy. But later on, and at least in episode 8, when they get more into the case, this is when like Taesumi and Uyung-woo actually meet and talk to each other, especially when they're under like the tree. And she says she's been watching Uyung-woo since the wedding dress case, and like she kind of basically offers her a job at Taesan company. She's like, why are you working at a place like this? Come work for me. I see your brilliance outside of your autism. I'm sure they're not treating you correctly and things of that nature. And then after that is like after the whole case and everything, when Uyung-woo kind of goes home and tells her dad, because she's mad at her dad when she confronts him in episode 7 about why he was there and like asking him if she's only working there because of special treatment is when, surprise, surprise, he tells her the big reveal. Taesumi is actually her mother, her biological birth mother. I think that's another reason why I like this show so much, is because it also tells a story about a single father, because you don't see that a lot.
Yeah.
And especially when they are single father stories, it's usually because like the mother was sick, the mother died. It's never just because, I'll say the word, the mother was a deadbeat.
The mother just left.
Yeah, because she basically is. So, and I think just because of my own personal experience, I appreciate that also. So those stories aren't told the same. Of course, it's different because he was, you know, growing up, raising her, having an autistic child. So it's a lot different, but still.
Yeah. Throughout the whole show, I was just thinking like how amazing it was for him to like dedicate his whole life just to raise her.
Up everything.
Like he left law, he left everything. Yeah.
And you see that in that episode too, like after, because like Woo ends up falling down the stairs, so he takes her to the hospital and he like explains like how they met. So like they met in school, they just liked each other, and then, you know, of course, what normal college people do, they had an accident and she ended up getting pregnant. And this, like, he just had so much love for her already to want to give up everything, where he's like, if you have this baby, I will leave you alone. I will give up being a lawyer. You don't have to like mention us or like be seen with us. Just give her to me, basically. Because they both already come from like different backgrounds. He came from like a poor family, and like Taesumi was already from like a rich, pristine family. So her, I guess that's where my question from the beginning comes from. It was already stigmatized for her potential and the way her family was to be pregnant, and she's not married. So now that I'm talking, that makes more sense. But yeah, but it's interesting too, because like when he was telling her the whole background of how they met, and when Uyung-woo asks like if he has any regrets, I like how he never regretted raising her. He was just like, my only regret was just like giving up being a lawyer, because if I knew what I know now, I could have made sure you were established and set for you didn't have to go through the struggles of like trying to get a job. You could have just worked for me. And like at my law firm.
Yeah. No, I get that. But like, I also wonder too, like, he said he'll get out of her hair, but like, he could have just moved to a completely different place and like started doing law there, you know?
I don't know. I don't know where his logic was. I guess when he said like he'll give up everything, he literally meant he'll give up everything.
I don't know, but like, I just feel like giving up, he could have given up everything, but he could have just done it in a different place. Like, from what I understood, she just didn't want them to be around her. So if they weren't around her, problem solved.
Maybe he thought it was admirable, and he didn't really look like the type to have the money to move. I don't know how that stuff works. Okay.
And then plus, where's his family? Like, we know nothing about like his support system or anything.
He said his mother helped raise Uyung-woo. That's how she knew her mother wasn't actually dead. She brings up that because I guess he lied to her and said that she was dead, but she's like, I knew she was alive this whole time because grandma got drunk one night and said like Taesumi basically ruined her son's life. She's still alive, all this stuff. So
yeah, I don't know. I guess I wish she was just more in the picture, unless she passed away.
Yeah. So I understand like the weird of like he could have also just moved, especially it seemed like he was a promising lawyer when he was in school, just to give that up. But I also understand in his sense, he wasn't thinking about himself. He was just thinking of how am I going to raise a child? Especially when you're that young, you don't think in the future or plan, especially when this was an unexpected pregnancy. That wasn't his first thought. So I get it. And now that he's older, he can reflect. And then also just with this episode, this is where after this, they kind of lost me. Because Uyung-woo goes and actually confronts Taesumi. At first, because Taesumi thought she was there to like accept the job. But then she's like, well, I'm sorry. This is just a conflict of interest because I can't work for someone who I am related to and doesn't even recognize her whole daughter. And then when she was going into like the whole thing of like she knows that that's her daughter, I don't know what type of awards. What's the actress's name again? Hang on. I don't know what type of awards Jin Kyung can receive from that scene alone. But if she can, I need her to get every single one of them.
Yeah.
Because just the way that was powerful. I felt that oh shit moment. And like all the thoughts probably going through her head. I'm like, whatever awards she can get, give it to her. Whatever awards Uyoung the actor for Uyoung, any of them, just give it. That was probably my whole favorite scene of the series.
Yeah, no, it was really well shot.
It was powerful.
No, it was really well shot. Like like you said, like I think the camera work really helped with that too. Cause like you as the viewer got to kind of like experience that emotion like along with her. So
yeah.
Impactful for sure.
Very impactful. Okay. Yeah, so we're kind of getting short on time, guys. That's just the way things work sometimes. You know what? Let me just talk about episode 10. This is where I'll put a trigger warning right now about sexual assault. So this is the case about a guy is being accused of, basically they're saying that he raped a woman with a mental disability. Her name is Shin Hae-young. She's 27 years old and she has a mental capacity of a 13-year-old. That's what the psychiatrist during the court case said. So I just thought this one was interesting because it really brought up like Uyoung-woo's own battle that has been mentioned before with her relationship with Lee Junho as like, again, an autistic person and a non-autistic person dating. And like, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but like even at the end after the trial where like her and Lee Junho are talking and she's like, it's like one of those things where like, if I say I love someone and other people say I don't love them, then apparently I don't actually love them because they're assuming I don't know my own feelings because I'm autistic. So I just thought that episode was so powerful.
Yeah, I felt really bad for her character too.
Which character?
The girl, the 27-year-old girl, the autistic one.
Yeah, because like there was a point where like she wanted to meet up with Uyoung-woo at the beginning when she takes on the case to defend the guy, and then she even told her, she's like, please don't arrest him, because I love him. And then Uyoung-woo kind of brings up like he seems to have a pattern or like he's kind of like a scumbag, and she's like, yeah, I know, but I still like him. So I thought that was interesting, and it also just shows like the perspective of like the caretaker of someone with a mental disability, because this is where I personally thought like her mother kind of went a little bit too far as protecting her, because she only filed that police report saying that he raped her because of her mother, and her mother thinks that she won't be able to understand what love is. And like even when they're in the court, the prosecutor brings up like she asks her when she takes the stand, the girl, if she knows the difference between sexual assault and sexual intercourse. It's a slippery slope with that, which I understand the point of this.
It's very tricky.
Yeah, with this episode, that's why it really makes you think of that. Because like I said,
I was going to say, out of all of the episodes, this one had me the most confused. And this is the one I thought the most about. I'm like, wait, if this were to happen in real life, how would they approach this, you know?
Exactly. And they do. So it's like, I don't know, because I've never heard of a case like this before. So
yeah,
personally, I mean,
what did you think of him though?
I thought he was a scumbag. But I do think he liked her. I think he was kind of using her for money. But I don't want to say I don't think he sexually assaulted her.
I thought so too, but I don't think he raped her though. Like, I never thought that.
Because I know they tried to bring up, like, afterwards when it happened, she went home. When she gets nervous, she scratches her hand, and she was scratching it so much that it bled. And I was sitting here thinking, I'm like, okay, well, is that it because after they had sex, she regretted it, or because she was afraid of her mother finding out? I feel like that was more she was afraid of her mother finding out, personally.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's hard to see though, because her mom had such a strong role in it, in her like thoughts and her opinions
Yeah,
about things.
that's what I mean. Like, she treated her like she was very defenseless, even though, unlike the guy from episode 3, she had a better, I feel like, understanding than he did. Because even his mother didn't treat, I feel like, him as strictly as her mother did. And I don't know if that will also bring up the thing of like genders, like even though he is disabled and autistic and he only has a mental capacity of 6 to 10-year-old, he's still a male while she is a woman.
So she needs to be more protected.
Yeah, even though her mental capacity is at 13, but because she's a woman, she needs to be more protected.
Mm-hmm.
That could be an argument as well.
Yeah. This one was a very deep one, I think.
It was. I wish we had more time to go into it like I wanted to, but it's fine. It's just, at the end of the day, he still got like a guilty version. He had to serve 2 years in prison. So. Hey guys, so real quick, I cannot believe I just remembered this after me and the Feast stopped recording. I was mostly worried about time, but the reason I wanted to emphasize episode 10 so much was not only just to talk about like how we view like autistic people and then finding love, it also made me think just about the whole case itself, because he was accused of rape, but like their defense for him was that they were in love and dating. And I'm so mad at myself for not bringing this up, but I just wanted to bring up that you can still be sexual assaulted and harassed even if you're in a relationship or marriage. Not many people believe that, but it is true. I think there is a term for it, but I cannot think of it on the top of my head, especially when you're marriage. Because consent is important, guys. It doesn't matter if you've been dating for forever, for 10 years, if you've been married for like 20 years. You still need consent if you want to act in any type of sexual activity. No still means no, even if you've known that person for a while. Because a lot of sexual abuse are between people that they know. So it's really just a food for thought if you guys want to think about that more. But again, I'm mad at myself I didn't bring it up, but I wanted to point out because, especially like with the text messages that Woo Young-woo was using to defend that they were a couple, I didn't particularly really agree with that because, like I just said, I was just thinking about, well, what about those instances where the couple are dating, but they can still be sexual assaulted? So just food for thought.
Did you agree with that?
See, I just don't know. Because I also don't know, that also goes into the way their law system works. Because if you notice when he talked about the jury's decision, the majority of the jury found him not guilty. But he still had to serve some time. So that's where my confusion of how their law works come into. Because in most cases, if he's found not guilty, I think he would have maybe got either probation or not 2 years. Again, that's where just my misunderstanding comes from. But then like throughout the whole thing as well, just the way she was crying, that's why I was like, okay, I just don't know. But continuously she kept begging not to send him to jail. So I think she was at a mental capacity to know whether she felt like she was taking advantage of or not. I don't think she believes she was. I can't say for him. I just really don't know. I just feel bad. Well, honestly, I really feel like in that episode, she was just more afraid of just like her mother than anything else. Because that also comes into the whole situation about love. It's not only how she feels about love, it's just like since her mother is her main caretaker, is she also getting in the way of her finding love? The plaintiff, Hae Young.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's 27.
Yes.
I think her and Woo Young-woo are actually the same age. Isn't Woo Young-woo in this drama 27?
I think so. 27 or 28.
Yeah, so I think that's why she was able to look at it that way as her own life more also, because it's about them being the same age, both with mental disabilities. So we'll get into the last two episodes just real quick, because they go into coexist with each other, like episode 7 and episode 8. So it's about a tech company named Round, and basically, I don't know if this phrase is the same here in the US, where they call it spear phishing, where they basically got hacked. The manager opened up an email thinking it was like from someone he knew personally. And when he opened it up, it was allowed the hacker to get into the personal information and steal personal data of their clients. I actually don't know what that tech company does, but apparently it involves having clients where they can put in their personal information. And just know that the two CEOs are Bae In-chul and Kim Chan-hong. A lot of things happened that I didn't get to talk about, just like Juno and Myung-woo broke up. She broke up with him. She didn't really tell him why. So we kind of see him still kind of pining over and like questioning why. Also, because they decided to give Myeon-suk cancer because dramas love giving their characters cancer.
They gave him
we
cancer.
see him going and preparing to get surgery. And that part was funny because like she went to go see him before the surgery and she's all telling him the facts of like the survival rate and like his mother's all there. And she's like, what? My son's going to die. He's like, no, mom, it's okay. I told you about her. It's fine. And he's like, Woo-young, I know you're worried, but I will be okay. And then when she's like, I hope you survive. And he's like, while they're wheeling him out, he's like, Woo-young, be quiet. Just be quiet. That's all he kept telling her. I just thought it was a funny moment to bring light of the situation. But again, because we saw it in the episodes I didn't talk about, but just like the forced relationship of Seon and Attorney Kwang or Minu, because I don't know. I guess she liked him either before their trip to Jeju or like during it when he started being nice.
I think she realized it then.
But it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, yeah, he's big, nice, but like how many times have you had to call him out on the hypocritical stuff he says or does, as well as the bullying of Woo-young? Like that just doesn't make sense to me. You know all the things he does and he says, but we're gonna still like and have a crush on him.
Well, yeah, that whole arc was just unnecessary.
I think it was also unnecessary. Because another thing I didn't get to mention also, my qualms with him that we weren't able to get into full detail is that he ends up basically finding out that Woo-young is the daughter of Tae Soo-min. And then he tries to go. Yeah, he tries to go and like basically blackmail and say, well, I want to work here because I think you're a better company than the company I work for. And then she's like, okay, well, if you want to work for me, your job is to try to get Woo-young to quit. And then I'll hire you.
Whatever means necessary.
Yes, again with the hypocrisy of the favoritism. He just bothers me. He just bothers me so much. But yeah, basically go through the trial. And then another thing too, if we're staying on him, where they try to bribe the judge because they find out him, the person they're defending, and the senior attorney, his name is Jong Seung-jun, who takes over the case because Jong Myung-suk, of course, is having a surgery. And he is brought up in episode, is it 9 with the North Korean defector? Yes, because he comes into the cafeteria and yelling at Myung-suk because of the doctor, because he was part of some big, important community, I guess. And he's just an asshole. But he's also, I guess, was necessary because you find out the difference of like who Woo-young works with and like just really how Myung-suk really treated her differently as far as like passes and stuff. You know, like how she got a little bit easier off with like the things that she did or said, because he wasn't having that. But I also just think he has a power trip.
He definitely understood her better. Yeah. But I also think he didn't like her because of like, you know, like her autism.
I also think he didn't like her because she was a woman, or she's a woman. I felt a little sexism there. I'm not gonna lie. But he was like that with all the rookies. He just had that power trip of like, I've been here longer. I know what I'm doing. If you guys try to bring anything up or even just help and do your job, I'm not going to listen because I know what I'm doing and you're not. But what I really enjoyed in these last 2 episodes is that the judge of the case would put him in his place. I enjoyed that very much because the judge would mimic a lot of things that Woo would try to tell him. And he got shaped. And I enjoyed watching that.
Yep. And I really liked how, like, in court, he would always, he was always a letdown. Like, he would try to present it, and then he just wouldn't know what to do. And then, like, the younger ones, the juniors, would have to step up, so.
Exactly. And I'm like, so much for your seniority, right?
Poor man. Not poor man. He had a whole meltdown about, like, what to do, and then Soo-yeon came in and actually saved them from literally losing that case.
Yeah, that's what I meant where I felt the sexism come in because he was like, what are you doing? But I don't feel like when Attorney Kwong and his weird trying to last minute redemption arc also tried to step in and help, he didn't give him the same backlash. Yeah.
It's true. At least, you know, the show writers made him a complete asshole. Unlike
he was true to his character.
Who was just wish-washy.
I guess they were trying to make him more relatable because there are people like that, but I don't know. Those are the ones I don't like the most.
No.
I know everything is not black and white and there's gray, but it's just the way he would do and say something where I would agree with and then be a hypocrite about it and go against what he's preaching or complaining about is why I didn't like.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And I feel like I guess the reason why we don't like it that much is because we didn't see his growth, you know? Like, we just saw, like, scenes here and there of him. And there was, like, so much gap between each scene in which we saw him. Like, one scene he's like being a total jerk, and then the next scene he's trying to be better, or he's nice, I don't know.
His
a lot of
growth
gaps.
Was like, it was, like, inorganic, and it was very rushed to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, and then what else did I put? Oh, when the CEO Bae In-chul basically, just because he feels so defeated, this part shocked me when he tried to kill himself in the courtroom by taking that poison.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I was like, oh my god. That did shock me a little bit. I wasn't expecting that.
That just shows you how seriously he took the downfall.
He took it very hard. Again, going back to complaining about Attorney Kwong, because before all that, we were talking about how Soo-yeon and him basically saved the case. Before that, Attorney Jung actually kicked Woo Young-woo off the case because he felt like she was being arrogant. But at the same time, when Attorney Kwong pulled Soo-yeon aside, like out of his office when she was going to try to defend why it was wrong to kick her off the case, he brought up what you were saying earlier about her being a genius and like she'll always get off, but and how they have to be careful. I'm like, but no, sir, he just kicked her off the case because he thought she was being arrogant. So I didn't understand his argument in that.
I guess he meant when they were working with Attorney Jung, not necessarily.
Maybe that's what I was just going to bring up. Maybe, and that's the case, that's different. Maybe he just needs to stop working with Attorney Jung, but still. I don't know.
Yeah.
But basically, towards the end of 15 is when we meet, I think he's 13, and it ends up being Tae-soo-min's son, Chae Sang-kyun, and he's watching the news, and then he's like calling someone, leaving a voicemail. So basically, we find out the next episode that he is the hacker. So I guess she's just prominent to have like genius children. Like both of her children end up being geniuses.
Right.
And that he basically just wants to confess. But then again, like we said, Tae-soo-mi is up for like an important position in the government. So like she's trying to really get him to stop. It's just interesting when you learn why he wants to confess. Basically, it is because of her. He's like, No matter how people view my mom, when I was growing up, she made sure I didn't become like the other, he says, like rich bastards who like would do stuff and get away with it. She made sure I would take responsibility for my actions and the consequences. It's just interesting when it has to deal with her that she doesn't want to take the actions and consequences.
Yeah.
A little selfish there, honey. A little selfish.
But like, yeah. I was just like, wow, how did a 13-year-old manage to do all of that? That's just crazy.
Yeah. Because it kind of goes into like, what did you think of their talk when Uyungu basically not confronted Taesumi, but like was trying to convince her to let her son testify? And she also brought that up. I think she kind of goes into the thing where like she basically was paraphrasing, like, I know you weren't a mother for me. Obviously, you pretended I existed, but you somehow had an effect on this child who actually wants to do the right thing and be held accountable for his actions. So if you can still just continue being that mother for this case, that'd be great. And you could tell that actually really affected her. I feel like that was also closure for her, but because after she left, like that's the first time I really feel like we saw Uyungu cry. So
we've seen her get sad many times, but that was the first time she was just like really deeply emotional about something. So, well, I guess she she was able to relate to how she didn't have that kind of experience with the mother, but he does, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So for that to be taken, that vision of what a mother should be to be taken away from him was like a big deal to her because she didn't have that. So
yeah, and she didn't let that like get in the way of anything. So
that was such a sad conversation.
It was. I felt so bad for her. So she's just like, you weren't a mother to me, but you were a mother to someone else. At least step up. So, and I mean, that's pretty much it. The case basically ended up going into their favor. And then just at the end, we find out her contract's renewed. They all have dinner together. And yeah.
And then we see the CEO of Hanbada murmuring to herself, I let you go easy this time. And then drive off into the sunset.
Yes, because initially she actually wanted to release an article that she was working on with a reporter to expose Taesumi and Uyungu as being mother and daughter, but she decided not to because of this case.
Mother and daughter.
Yes. So we'll see if maybe that'll get out in like season 2. There's just a lot of questions that I have for season 2 that I'll see if they're answered. And hopefully I'm not too disappointed because I know how sometimes, especially with Korean dramas, the second seasons usually don't add up to the first. That's why I appreciate it, especially in older dramas where they just be like one and done. But yeah, we'll just see.
Yeah. And I really hope like for season 2 they actually fully they have a full arc for the characters. You know, because like in this season, like many of the arcs, many of the subplots were half-baked. They started one thing and then it just stopped somewhere else. And like, I don't know, it was kind of a mess in that way. A lot of plot holes. So I just hope they just are a little bit more tighter about that.
Yeah. So we'll see. But overall, what is your initial takeaway from the drama? And I guess how you like it, Nafis?
I enjoyed it very much. It was very good insight into how a person on the autism spectrum deals with things. They did a really good job explaining like little minute details. Like, for example, you know how she counts to 3 before she walks into a room? I thought that was really nice that they explained why she did that. Because like it's too overwhelming for her to go from one place to another. And so that's the way for her to brace herself. So they did a good job with that. The acting is phenomenal. Everyone did really good. But it was just really just the structure and the plotting. The first half was amazing, I think. Very well done. Good build up. But then the second half was like kind of a letdown. It felt a little rushed.
I understand that, especially for a drama that's like 16 episodes. They could have made this like 10 or 12, to be honest.
Yeah, they could have stopped at 10 or 12, I agree.
I agree the cases were important and I enjoyed some of them, like even the cases we didn't get to talk about. But it could have been told shorter. And that's saying for each episode is like an hour long. It still, for some reason, felt rushed. Yeah. So maybe in season 2, they'll go more into like the characters themselves personally, or I just don't know. I really don't know.
I would like to see more character development because we did not have that here.
Yeah. They were just brought up briefly, but like, yeah, not explained.
What would you rate it?
I mean, honestly, rewatching it and the notes I took, even though I didn't get to go over all my notes. So hopefully this doesn't feel too rushed, guys. I'm sorry. I'd probably give it like...
Hey, we're just mimicking the show that we watched.
I'd probably give it an 8.5 or not. Yeah, an 8.5 out of 10.
I was going to say 8 out of 10.
I still, honestly, I still really enjoyed it. I still feel like, personally, the topics that they brought up is good for discussions like we're having now. I don't think they brought any of them up in a too negative light. And again, people will like agree or disagree. Not everyone's going to like everything. So, but I feel like people that do disagree are other ones that have this experience and are just able to tell like their story, so people can just see a different side of like the autism spectrum and all that. Because I'm not gonna lie, especially the US, I feel like the stigma of autism has gotten worse, and I actually really feel like that's a reason why a lot of people are vaccines here in the US, because if no one remembers, there was a huge thing really before COVID, maybe between like 2016 and like 18, where there was a lot of accusations of people saying vaccines were connected to autism. And I think that's why a lot of people were hesitant to take the vaccine in the US, at least during COVID. So want us also break the stigma of that, because we have a lot of now unvaccinated children and diseases that are coming back.
Yeah, diseases that were supposedly eradicated from the US, at least, are now making a comeback.
Because we stopped vaccinating children as much as we did back then. So, as well as a bunch of other stuff of just how they're viewed in society, how we can hopefully make it better. A lot of my stuff I say are hopeful and takes a lot of years, but still, as long as discussion can get started of how we approach it. And I like how they brought other stuff too, like other disabilities, not just autism, but other mental disabilities, the LGBT community, like with the wedding dress and things of that nature. Because I still went into like the mental disability, because I was affecting her mentally of how she couldn't express who she really was as a person, being suppressed.
Yeah. Like the writer said, this was a great show to get a lot of conversation started. So hopefully in the future we see more shows, movies, things like that reflect these types of communities a little bit more better. Or even in season 2, I don't know.
And I think I also liked it too, just because it is a Korean drama, so they are starting to talk more about this stuff, especially like problems they see in their own society. So
yeah,
because I'm used to that here in America, but like they're not always told in the great way, especially how she, like the writer said when she was getting this checked by a professional, how she enjoyed this because it brought up in a lighter way and not like in a dark way, which a lot of American shows like to do with problems like this. They tell them so dark. I'm like, can I just get a nice, like, you bring awareness, but it's still enjoyable. You show the happy sides of life and these disabilities, not always like the pain, like the sorrows, the tragedy.
Yeah.
We can have discussions about serious problems in a light way.
We can.
They don't always have to be so dark. There are dark sides, but still. Move away from the darkness, guys. Okay, but yeah, that is it from us. So I can go ahead and do the closing. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I guess I lied, and this is about 2 hours. I was trying to keep it under. I honestly didn't get through all my notes, but hey, that's what happens when you really get into talking about a subject. So we hope you enjoyed the show. Let us know how you think about the show and any of your opinions. You can email us at iwasthinkingpod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at iwasthinkingpod. it'd be nice if you can like rate and review us. Just let us know how we're doing. Give us the highest ratings. That's always appreciated. And as always, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is, I hope it's good for you. But yes, you'll basically probably hear us in the next year. So I guess I can go ahead and say Happy New Year. Hopefully 2023 treats us all better. Only the future can tell. Any last words, Nafis?
Nope. That is all. Stay safe, stay well, be healthy.
Yes, that is it from us. Okay, have a good one, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.